Let him sign it. By sunrise, Min-jae will be finished.
Don't sign that copy.
Let him sign it. By sunrise, Min-jae will be finished. The words were quiet enough to disappear beneath the hum of the Manhattan conference room. But Maya Brooks heard every syllable. Kang Min-jae sat at the end of the polished table, one hand resting beside a black fountain pen and the final agreement. His cousin, Kang Tae-ho, stood near the windows with Victor Hale, both men speaking Korean because they believed the interpreter across the room understood only English and French. Maya's conference badge gave them every reason to believe that. It listed her assignment. Not the 6 years she had once spent in Seoul. Min-jae reached for the pen. Maya looked at the contract, then at Tae-ho, and felt the old fear rise in a familiar place beneath her ribs. 6 years earlier. Telling the truth had nearly ended her career. This time, silence could destroy someone else's. Her mother's voice came back to her as clearly as if Evelyn Brooks were standing beside the table. Understand before you answer. Maya understood enough. Don't sign that copy. Every face in the room turned toward her. How did an interpreter almost nobody in that room considered important become the one person who could stop Min-jae from signing? And why was someone inside his own family willing to risk thousands of people's retirement security to remove him? Stay with Maya's story, because the answer begins with one careless assumption and ends with a choice neither money nor family power can make for her. If stories about dignity, betrayal, family, and second chances have your attention, subscribe and turn on notifications. And tell us in the comments where you're watching from today. To understand why Maya risked her career in that conference room, we need to go back to the morning she first entered Kang Meridian's world. 32 days earlier. Maya had known none of their secrets, and Kang Min-jae had been only another powerful man whose name appeared on a contract. She first saw him on a gray Monday morning in Midtown, while rain stitched narrow lines across the windows of the Meridian Grand Hotel. Maya arrived 20 minutes early, as she always did, with 2 sharpened pencils, a notebook, and a printed terminology sheet inside her leather folio. The assignment was supposed to be straightforward English-French interpretation during acquisition talks between Kang Meridian Group and a European manufacturing company called Bellier Systems. The deal involved factories in Ohio, Pennsylvania, and Quebec, plus thousands of employees whose pensions and health benefits depended on whatever the lawyers put into the final agreement. That last part mattered to Maya more than the men in expensive suits probably expected. Her father had spent 32 years maintaining elevators in Philadelphia, and he had once told her that executives called benefits liabilities because they did not know the names of the people counting on them. He had been gone for 9 years, but Maya still heard him whenever contracts reduced human lives to columns. At 40, she had learned not to romanticize business. She had also learned that precise words could keep ordinary people from paying for somebody else's ambition. A young coordinator led her into a private conference room where nameplates marked each seat in English, French, and Korean. Maya noticed the Korean immediately, then trained herself not to linger on it. She had not hidden her language background from her agency. It simply had nothing to do with the job they had booked her to perform. Her profile listed Korean under additional competencies, but event badges were generated from assignment languages only. That small administrative choice would later become the most important fact in the room. Daniel Cho entered first, carrying 2 phones and a stack of folders tucked against his chest. He was 36, sharply dressed, and moving with the tense efficiency of a man whose calendar had become a battlefield. Miss Brooks, I'm Daniel Cho, Mr. Kang's chief of staff. Thank you for being early. Early is cheaper than apologizing, Maya said. Daniel smiled once. You may be the first person in this building to understand that. He walked her through the agenda, the approved glossaries, and the confidentiality rules without trying to explain her own profession to her. That earned him more credit than he knew away. The door opened again, and conversation in the hallway seemed to narrow around the man who entered. Kang Min-jae was not physically imposing in the theatrical way Maya had expected from the press photographs. He was lean, controlled, and almost severe in a charcoal suit, with silver just beginning at his temples. His presence came less from size than from attention. When someone spoke, he looked as if the rest of the room had temporarily stopped existing. Tai-ho entered behind him. Older by several years, broader through the shoulders, his expression polished into permanent patience. Victor Hale followed with a leather briefcase and the practiced warmth of an outside transaction lawyer from Hale and Ward, representing one of the financing groups behind the acquisition. Introductions passed quickly. When Min-jae reached Maya, he did not ask where she was from or compliment her French before hearing it. He simply said, "Daniel tells me you reviewed the terminology list. Did anything concern you?" "One phrase," Maya said. The French draft uses an expression closer to assumed obligation than contingent obligation. Those are not the same promise. Victor glanced up from his folder. Min-jae did not. His eyes remained on Maya. Was that what Bellier wrote, or what they meant? Maya considered the question. "I can tell you what they wrote. Meaning requires context." For the first time, the corner of his mouth moved. "Good answer." The meeting began at 9. For 3 hours, Maya moved between English and French, while lawyers debated warranties, environmental exposure, pension reserves, and control of several patents. She never performed interpretation like a machine swapping words. She listened for intention, register, hesitation, and the places where a speaker softened something dangerous. Min-jae noticed when Bellier's chairman described a reserve as adequate. Maya rendered the word accurately, but watched Victor mark something beside a paragraph on page 47. Later, when the chairman used a stronger French phrase suggesting the reserve had been independently validated, Victor stopped writing. The difference was small. Small differences were Maya's profession. During the first break, she went to the side table for coffee she did not particularly want. Tai-ho and Victor stood several yards away near the windows, speaking in low English at first. Victor looked toward Maya's badge. "English and French," he said. Tai-ho followed his gaze, then he switched to Korean. Maya's hand stopped above the sugar packets. She had not lived in Seoul since her late 20s, but the language remained inside her with the stubborn permanence of a second set of bones. She looked down and stirred her coffee. Tai-ho said, "The pension annex needs to stay outside Daniel's review until Thursday." Victor answered in careful Korean. Less fluent, but fully understandable. "The signature page will match. That's what matters." "And Min-jae?" "He signs the acquisition package. The liability follows the signature." Tai-ho's voice lowered. "After that, the board has its reason." Maya kept stirring long after the sugar had dissolved. Victor glanced toward her again. "She can't understand us." Tai-ho looked directly at Maya's badge. "Not a word." Maya lifted the cup and took a sip as though nothing in the room had changed. Inside, several things had changed at once. She knew there was a pension annex being withheld from Min-jae's own chief of staff. She knew somebody expected Min-jae's signature to attach a liability to Kang Meridian. She knew Tai-ho believed that liability would give the board a reason to act against his cousin. What she did not know was whether the annex was illegal, merely aggressive, or something Min-jae had privately authorized. She also did not know whether the conversation had been complete enough to justify accusing anyone. That distinction mattered. Maya had once learned what happened when a correct concern was delivered without evidence powerful people could not ignore. 6 years earlier, at a multinational language firm in Washington, she had reported that a senior manager was altering interpreter notes after compliance meetings. The company thanked her, investigated quietly, and fired the manager 3 months later. Then they stopped giving Maya major assignments because clients considered her difficult around confidentiality issues. Nobody put the retaliation in writing. Nobody had to. She had rebuilt her career, one contract at a time, and promised herself she would never confuse courage with carelessness again. When the break ended, Maya returned to her seat. She did not look at Tae-ho. She waited until the afternoon session reached the document schedule. Then she raised one hand. Before we continue, I need clarification for interpretation consistency. Are all annexes now frozen across the English and French versions? Victor answered too quickly. Yes. Daniel looked at him. All of them? Victor's smile stayed in place. All material annexes. Maya wrote those two words in her notebook. Material annexes. Min-jae noticed the hesitation. After the meeting, he asked Daniel to remain, then looked at Maya. You asked that question for a reason. It was not phrased as an accusation. Maya closed her folio. I asked because multiple language versions create risk when attachments are still moving. That's the professional answer. It is also the true one. He studied her for a moment. Is there another true one? Maya could have told him everything she had heard. Instead, she chose the narrowest statement she could defend. I would personally compare every annex, including anything someone has decided is not material, before you sign the final package. Daniel's expression changed. Min-jae asked, Are you warning me? I'm telling you that wording this expensive deserves a second pair of eyes. Silence held for 2 seconds. Then Min-jae turned to Daniel. Free signature authority until we reconcile every attachment. Daniel nodded. I'll have legal run the version history tonight. Maya expected Min-jae to press her again. He did not. Thank you, Miss Brooks. She left with no idea whether she had prevented a disaster or merely postponed a negotiation. By 10 that night. Daniel knew something was wrong. The approved acquisition package listed Annex 14C as a standard employee benefits schedule. The shared document system showed 3 versions. The third had been uploaded 47 minutes after Kang Meridian's internal legal team marked the annex approved. When Daniel opened the later file, he found no obvious red line. The page count matched. The signature references matched. The formatting matched so precisely that an exhausted executive could have flipped past the change without noticing it. One paragraph did not. A clause that previously limited Kang Meridian's exposure to disclosed obligations now appeared to include undisclosed legacy deficits discovered after closing. Daniel called Min-jae at 10:18 p.m. Min-jae was still in his office. Who uploaded it? He asked. External deal room credential. Hale's firm has access, but so do Bellier's advisors. Can we prove who changed the paragraph? Not yet. Then don't accuse anyone. Preserve the logs, Daniel hesitated. And Maya Brooks? Min-jae looked through the glass wall of his office at the empty corridor. What about her? Her question is the reason we checked. Min-jae was quiet. Then tomorrow we find out what she saw. Maya spent that night in her apartment in Brooklyn, trying not to think about the Kang family. Her mother called at 11, as she often did when insomnia made television useless. Evelyn Brooks had retired from teaching middle school history 3 years earlier and treated retirement as an administrative error she intended to outlive. You sound tired, Evelyn said. Long contract. Important people. People who think they're important, Evelyn laughed softly. Those are usually the tiring kind. Maya looked at her notebook on the kitchen table. She had written the Korean phrases exactly as she remembered them, then marked each line with a question mark wherever context was missing. As required by her agency's compliance protocol, she photographed the page and uploaded it to her encrypted work journal before bed, creating a timestamp she barely thought about at the time. Her mother could not see the page over the phone. Still, Maya felt 12 years old again, tempted to ask for an answer instead of deciding for herself. "Mom, do you remember what you used to say before my debate competitions?" "Which thing?" I said. "Many brilliant things. Understand before you answer." "Of course." "What if understanding takes too long?" Evelyn's humor faded. "Then you decide what you can live with if you're wrong, and what you can live with if you're silent." Maya stared at the page. "That's less comforting than the original version." "You're 40 now. You get the adult edition." The next morning, Maya arrived to find Daniel waiting outside the conference room. "Mr. Kang would like 5 minutes before we start." Min-jae stood alone near the windows when she entered. A printed copy of Annex 14C lay on the table between them. "You were right," he said. Maya kept her face still. "About what?" "There was an altered annex." He slid the paper toward her. "Did you see this yesterday?" "No." "Did anyone mention it around you?" There it was. The question she had expected. Maya could protect herself by saying no. She could also disclose the conversation now, after physical evidence had confirmed part of what she heard. During the break, Mr. Hale and Mr. Kang Tae-ho discussed a pension annex in Korean. Min-jae did not react for almost a full second. "You speak Korean?" "Yes." Daniel looked at her badge through the open doorway, then back at her. Maya continued. "They believed I didn't. I heard that the annex was being kept outside Daniel's review until Thursday. I heard that your signature would make a liability follow the acquisition. I heard Tae-ho say the board would have its reason afterward." Min-jae's voice remained level. "Why didn't you tell me immediately?" "Because I didn't know whether I had heard a conspiracy, an ugly but legal strategy, or a conversation you had authorized. I had no document and no context." "You could have asked." "And if I had accused your cousin and your lawyer based on a private conversation I wasn't assigned to interpret, what would you have done?" Min-jae did not answer quickly enough. Maya nodded once. "Exactly." Daniel looked as though he wanted to disappear from the room. Instead, Min-jae surprised both of them. "You were careful. I don't like that you were careful with information that could affect my company, but I understand why." Maya held his gaze. Understanding isn't approval. No. Something almost like respect passed between them. Then Min-jae tapped the annex. "From now on, if you hear something that changes the meaning of this deal, tell Daniel or me. You won't be punished for bringing a concern." Maya's expression hardened before she could stop it. "Don't promise things your organization may not be willing to honor." Min-jae heard the history inside the sentence. He did not ask for it. "Then I'll promise only what I control," he said. "I will listen." That answer stayed with her longer than she wanted it to. The negotiations resumed, with new document controls. Every annex now required internal comparison before circulation. Victor complained that the added review was slowing the transaction. Tae-ho complained more quietly. For 3 days, nothing dramatic happened. That was exactly why Maya became more uneasy. People who had nearly succeeded at something rarely stopped because one door closed. They found another door on Thursday evening. Kang Meridian hosted a private dinner for senior negotiators and several family shareholders at the hotel restaurant. Maya had been told she might be needed for informal French interpretation during dinner, so she attended in a navy suit and pearl earrings her mother had given her years earlier. Helen Kang arrived shortly after 7. At 72, she carried none of the frailty strangers sometimes projected onto older women. She walked with a silver-headed cane because of an old knee injury and used it like punctuation rather than support. Min-jae stood when she approached. "Mother?" Helen looked around the table, taking inventory rather than greeting anyone. Her attention stopped on Maya. "The interpreter?" "Maya Brooks," Min-jae said. Maya offered a polite bow of her head. Helen answered in English. "I was told you caught an error in the French materials." "I pointed out a difference. Your legal team decided whether it mattered. Helen's eyes sharpened. People who know exactly what they did are usually safer than people who claim they saved everyone. Maya almost smiled. "I agree." Dinner began without incident. Halfway through the main course, one of Bellier's advisors mentioned post-closing employee obligations. Tai-ho interrupted in Korean, then switched to English after glancing toward Maya. "This is family governance. The temporary interpreter doesn't need to remain for it." The sentence was courteous enough to survive in the meeting minutes. Its meaning was not. Maya placed her napkin beside her plate. "Of course." Min-jae looked at Tai-ho. "She is here because Bellier requested language support. And Bellier's representative has left the table." Tai-ho gave Maya an apologetic smile that contained no apology. "No offense intended." Maya stood. "None required," before she stepped away. Victor referenced a figure in the French benefits summary. Maya stopped. "Excuse me. One correction before I leave." Victor's jaw tightened. The French text does not say the reserve is guaranteed. It says only that the reserve was estimated against a potential exposure. Those are not the same claim. A director across the table frowned. "That's a significant difference." "Yes," Maya said, "it is." Victor flipped through his pages. Tai-ho stared at her as if she had violated an invisible rule. Helen watched everyone. Min-jae asked Maya to remain. Tai-ho objected. Min-jae's reply was quiet. "If one sentence changes the financial meaning of this dinner, she stays." The humiliation Tai-ho intended had turned into a demonstration of why Maya belonged in the room. She did not celebrate it. She simply sat down and continued working. Later that night, Helen found Maya alone near the elevators. "My nephew dislikes being corrected in public." Helen said, "Most people do." "You weren't afraid of embarrassing him?" "I wasn't trying to embarrass him. I was trying to keep everyone from agreeing to a sentence that said something different in French." Helen considered that. "You make the distinction as if it matters." "It matters to me." The elevator doors opened. Helen stepped inside, then turned. "Good. Keep something that matters to you. This family is talented at turning principles into negotiations." The doors closed before Maya could answer. By the following Monday, someone had decided Maya was no longer merely inconvenient. At 7:12 a.m., a financial reporter published confidential excerpts from the Kang Meridian acquisition package. At 7:26, Maya's agency director called her. "Don't log into anything," he said. "We have a security issue." Maya sat upright in bed. "What happened?" "The leaked file was exported through your project credential at 2:43 yesterday morning." For a moment, she heard nothing except the refrigerator in the next room. "I was asleep at 2:43. We need to verify that my laptop was here." "Maya, the client has suspended your access pending review. We have to do the same." There was no anger in his voice. That made it worse. "Am I being suspended temporarily?" 6 years disappeared. She was back in Washington, listening to another careful voice explain why an institution that praised integrity could not afford the inconvenience of standing beside the person who had practiced it. "I understand," Maya said. She ended the call before he could hear anything else. At 8:15, Daniel called. Maya let it ring twice before answering. "I assume you know. I know the file shows your credential. Min-jae asked me to tell you we're preserving every access log before anyone resets anything." She almost laughed. How generous. Daniel absorbed the edge in her voice. "I'm not asking you to trust the system. I'm telling you we're not deleting evidence." That was different, and Maya knew it. "Thank you. There's more. The leaked document isn't the current package. It's a version from last Thursday afternoon. Maya closed her eyes and rebuilt Thursday in her head. She had interpreted the morning session, eaten lunch with two Bellier executives, and spent the afternoon in a breakout room reviewing French terminology. At 4:30, an event technician had asked everyone to re-authenticate after the conference portal stopped syncing. Maya opened her eyes. Who handled the credential reset on Thursday? Daniel went silent. Why? Because my password changed that afternoon. The technician gave me a temporary link and told me to create a new one. Do you remember his name? No. He wore the hotel's technology badge. Mid-30s, maybe brown hair, glasses. We'll check the service roster. Maya got out of bed. Daniel, don't tell anyone why you're checking it yet. You're giving my office security instructions now? I'm giving you the advice of someone whose name is currently attached to a crime she didn't commit. Daniel sighed. Fair point. At 10, Min Jae called her personally. Maya considered letting that call go unanswered too. She picked up. Ms. Brooks. Mr. Kang. I want you to know I did not request your suspension. But you allowed it. Your credential is on the export record. Until we understand how, I can't give you access to confidential files. I didn't ask for access. Then what are you asking for? Maya walked to the kitchen window. Rain had cleared overnight, and the roofs across Brooklyn looked painfully ordinary. My name cleared. Not quietly, not with a private apology after everyone has already decided what happened. I can make sure your contract is paid in full. Money doesn't erase the record. I can retain counsel for you. I already have a lawyer. That was not entirely true. She had the name of one from 6 years earlier and planned to call after breakfast. Min Jae changed approach. What would help preserve the logs, preserve the versions, don't let anyone decide the easiest explanation is the correct one. Done. And don't try to make the damage disappear for me. He was quiet. I thought I was offering help. You were offering control over the problem. Those aren't always the same thing. The sentence landed harder than she intended. Min Jae did not defend himself. Then tell me what help looks like to you. Maya looked at the notebook from the first meeting. Information. I want the exact hash and timestamp of the leaked file, the access history for my credential, and a copy of the agency's version manifest for every document I was assigned. Nothing outside material I was already authorized to handle. Why? Because language leaves fingerprints too. By noon, Min Jae's counsel approved a limited evidence package through Maya's attorney. It contained no secret board documents and no material beyond the files she had already worked on. It was enough. Maya spent the afternoon at her dining table with printed pages arranged across the wood in careful rows. She compared capitalization, defined terms, punctuation, and the tiny habits translators developed without noticing. Some people preferred shall where others used will. Some translated a French benefits term as retirement reserve. Maya always used pension reserve because that was the wording in Kang Meridian's approved glossary. At 6:37 p.m., she found the first crack. The leaked document contained the phrase legacy retirement exposure 3 times. Maya had never used it. She searched her authorized reference set. The phrase appeared in 2 documents prepared by Victor Hale's legal team. That did not prove Victor had leaked anything. It did prove that the supposedly exported Maya version had been modified after it left her hands. She called Daniel. The leak isn't my file. The system says it is. The system says my account exported it. The language says someone altered it first. She explained the phrase. Daniel did not dismiss her. Send the comparison through your lawyer. I'll have forensic counsel validate it independently. There's another thing. What? The leaked version includes a footnote I never received. If your system can show when that footnote entered the document chain, you can establish that my assigned copy and the leaked copy are not identical. Daniel's voice sharpened. Which footnote? Page 52, note 7. Bellier's outside actuary is cited by initials only. I'll check. For the first time since the suspension, Maya felt something stronger than fear. She felt direction. The service roster lead failed. The hotel had no technician matching Maya's description assigned to the conference floor that Thursday. Security footage showed a man in a hotel technology jacket entering the corridor at 4:19 p.m. and leaving 19 minutes later. His face remained mostly turned away from the camera. He had used a cloned staff badge. Daniel's team could not identify him. What they could prove was that Maya had not requested a credential reset through the normal help desk. The temporary reset page she had used had been a convincing duplicate of the conference portal. Someone had captured her old session token before she created the new password. That explained how her credential had been abused. It did not explain who ordered it. Maya's agency changed her status from suspended to administrative leave pending final review. The difference mattered legally and almost nowhere else. 2 clients canceled upcoming assignments. A third asked whether she was comfortable taking some time away from sensitive work. Maya deleted that email before she could answer in anger. Evelyn came over that evening carrying chicken soup, cornbread, and the expression she used when somebody had harmed one of her children and remained alive only because the law discouraged mothers from correcting matters directly. "Eat," she said. "I'm not hungry." That wasn't a question. Maya ate halfway through the bowl. Evelyn said, "Are they treating you like the last company did?" Maya looked down. "Not exactly." That's a careful answer. The CEO is preserving evidence. His chief of staff is actually checking things. And you trust them? Maya considered it. "I trust what they've done so far." Evelyn nodded. "That's enough for today." Maya smiled despite herself. "You always make trust sound like a utility bill." "It should be. Pay what is due. Don't prepay 12 months because the company sent you a nice brochure." The next morning, Min-jae asked to meet Maya in a private dining room at the hotel, with her attorney present by video for the first 10 minutes. He did not ask her to return to work. He showed her a forensic report confirming the leaked file had been edited from a document branch she had never accessed. Her attorney read the key paragraphs twice. "This substantially supports that Miss Brooks was framed," he said. "Substantially isn't publicly," Maya replied. Min-jae looked at her. "No, it isn't." Her attorney signed off on continued cooperation, then disconnected. Daniel placed a folder on the table. "We found the footnote you mentioned. It entered the branch at 11:06 p.m. Thursday through a Hale and Ward credential." Maya's attention went to Min-jae. "Victor, a credential from his firm," Min-jae corrected. "Not necessarily Victor himself." She respected the distinction even while hating it. "So what happens now?" "We keep building facts." "And Tae-ho?" Min-jae's expression changed almost invisibly. "He is my cousin. He is also a director. I cannot accuse him based only on what you overheard." "I know." "Do you?" Maya leaned back. "You think I want you to storm into his office because I heard 3 sentences in Korean? I think you're angry." "Of course I'm angry. Someone used my name as camouflage. But anger doesn't make evidence stronger." Min-jae's gaze held hers. "You really do understand before you answer." Maya blinked. "What? You said something similar the first day." "My mother says it. Constantly. She sounds difficult." "She'd like you." A faint smile appeared. "That sounds like a threat." It was the first time Maya laughed with him. The sound surprised both of them. Over the next 2 weeks, the acquisition slowed without formally stopping. Kang Meridian's board refused to abandon the deal because Bellier's factories supplied components the company needed for a long-term expansion in North America. Walking away would cost jobs and trigger penalties under a preliminary agreement. Moving forward without resolving the document manipulation could be worse. Min Jae was trapped between 2 expensive choices. Tai-ho used the delay against him. At a family board dinner, he argued that Min Jae had become indecisive and allowed a temporary contractor to disrupt a strategic acquisition. Maya did not attend that meeting, but Daniel later told her enough to understand the pressure. "He wants a signature date," Daniel said. "Why does the date matter so much?" "Because Bellier's lenders can reopen terms after the end of the month. Tai-ho says every day we wait increases the price." Maya thought about the first conversation. Until Thursday. The board has its reason. What happens to Min Jae if the acquisition closes with a hidden liability? Daniel's answer came slowly. If it's large enough, and there's evidence he approved it, the board could remove him for breach of fiduciary duty. Could Tai-ho become interim chairman? Daniel looked at her. Yes. The shape of the scheme sharpened. Maya still lacked the amount. She still lacked proof that Tai-ho had touched the altered document. But now she understood why the signature mattered. A week before the scheduled closing, her agency formally cleared her of causing the leak. The notice was private. Maya read it twice, then called the director. "Are you telling the clients who canceled me?" "We can confirm your status if they ask." "They didn't wait for me to ask before hearing I was suspended," he sighed. "Maya, we're trying to handle this responsibly." Responsibly would mean correcting the record with the same energy you use to protect yourselves. There was a long silence. "I'll speak with legal." She ended the call, knowing exactly what that meant. Maybe later that afternoon. Min Jae sent no flowers, no expensive gift, and no dramatic message. He sent her one sentence through Daniel. "If they will not correct it, Kang Meridian will state publicly that our investigation found no evidence you disclosed company information." Maya read the sentence 3 times. Then she called Min Jae directly. "Don't release anything yet." "Why?" "Because if you clear me while your own investigation is incomplete, Tai-ho will say you're protecting me for personal reasons." "There are no personal reasons." The answer came a fraction too quickly. Maya noticed. So did he. "Not yet," she said. Min Jae was silent, then gave a quiet breath that might have been laughter. "You are unusually comfortable correcting CEOs. Only when they make unusually obvious mistakes." "I walked into that one." "You did." Their relationship changed in small increments that were difficult to name. Min Jae began asking what Maya thought before telling her what his lawyers thought. Maya began trusting him with concerns before she could prove every detail beyond doubt. They worked in borrowed conference rooms and quiet corners of the hotel because her restored status allowed limited consultation on language evidence, not full deal access. One night, after everyone else left, Min Jae found her staring at 2 versions of a Korean corporate charter from different years. "You read Korean contracts too?" Slowly. "Legal Korean isn't my working specialty." "But you understand it." "Yes." He pulled out the chair across from her. "Where did you learn?" Maya hesitated, then answered because the question no longer felt like surveillance. "Seoul. Graduate program in language mediation and international trade. I stayed almost 6 years." "Why leave?" "My father got sick." Min Jae's face softened. "I'm sorry." "He recovered for a while, long enough to complain that I was hovering. And then he died 2 years later. I stayed in Philadelphia and Washington after that." Min Jae looked down at the papers. "My father died while I was negotiating in Singapore. I was trying to get home. I didn't make it. Maya did not offer the easy sentence that grief was no one's fault. Instead, she asked, "Do you still think about the flight?" His eyes lifted. "Every time I miss one." That was the first private truth he gave her without being asked for evidence. The next evening, Maya heard Min-jae speaking Korean in the hotel lobby with an elderly former employee who had traveled from New Jersey to deliver a condolence card for Helen after a family friend's death. The older man struggled with English and looked embarrassed when hotel staff failed to understand him. Maya stepped in naturally, translated his request, and then answered him in Korean when he asked whether she had lived in Seoul. They spoke for less than a minute when Maya turned. Min-jae was standing 10 feet away. His expression was unreadable. The older man bowed to Maya and left. Min-jae approached. "You told me you speak Korean." "I did." "You didn't tell me you speak it like that." "Like what?" "Like someone who knows when a person is being polite and when he's being careful." Maya closed her folio. "Those aren't the same thing either." Min-jae looked toward the doors the older man had used. "How much did you understand that first day, exactly?" Maya repeated the conversation from memory, including Victor's awkward phrasing and Taeho's choice of a word that could mean burden, exposure, or liability, depending on context. Min-jae listened without interrupting. When she finished, he asked, "Why didn't you tell me your Korean was this strong when we met?" "You didn't hire me for Korean." "That simple." "Mostly." "And the rest?" Maya met his eyes. "People hear interpreter and assume our value is the languages listed on a badge. Sometimes it's useful to know what people reveal when they think the badge is the whole person." Min-jae's mouth tightened. "Taeho underestimated you." "So did Victor." "I won't." Maya did not reward the promise. "We'll see." 2 days later, Daniel found a second altered annex. This one was more dangerous because it did not appear in the shared system at all. A printed copy had been delivered to Min-jae's office inside the closing binder. The document carried the same page numbers and footer code as the approved version. Its paragraph on legacy employee obligations was different by 23 words. Those 23 words could transfer responsibility for any undisclosed pension deficit discovered after closing to Kang Meridian. The amount was still unspecified. Daniel locked the binder in evidence storage and prepared a clean replacement. Min-jae wanted to postpone closing again. The board refused. Bellier's lenders had sent formal notice that the financing terms would expire at midnight on Friday. If the agreement was not signed, the seller could reopen the price or walk away. Taeho argued that the manipulated paper copy proved only that somebody wanted to create confusion. He urged Min-jae to sign a verified clean package under controlled conditions. That recommendation sounded reasonable. It was also exactly what made Maya nervous. If his goal is the signature, why is he suddenly helping you protect it? She asked Min-jae. They were alone in a small conference room Thursday night. Min-jae looked exhausted for the first time since she had met him. Because if the deal collapses, he loses money too. That's an explanation. It isn't necessarily the explanation. What are you suggesting? I'm suggesting we still don't know how the altered pages are entering the closing process. Daniel will control the final binder himself. Then check the binder after it leaves Daniel's hands and before it reaches yours. Min-jae gave her a tired look. At some point, trust has to exist. Maya folded her arms. Trust is not a substitute for controls. He almost smiled. You and my auditors would get along. Your auditors are probably charming. They are not. For a moment, the pressure in the room loosened. Then Min-jae said, "Come to the closing tomorrow." Maya's expression changed. As what? Language consultant, independent from the deal team. Review only what you're authorized to review. Your board will hate that. My board currently hates several things. I can survive one more. Tai-Ho will know I'm involved. He already knows you helped identify the leak discrepancy. That was true. Maya thought of her mother's adult version of the old rule. What can you live with if you're wrong, and what can you live with if you're silent? I'll be there. Friday began at 7 in the morning and stretched toward evening with the deliberate exhaustion of a closing designed to make everyone stop asking questions. Lawyers moved between rooms. Printers ran continuously. Bellier's executives joined by secure video from Paris and Montreal. Daniel maintained a numbered checklist of every final document. At 5:40 p.m., the clean acquisition agreement was printed in a secured conference suite. Daniel and 2 attorneys compared every page against the approved digital version. Maya reviewed only the bilingual schedule she had authority to check. At 6:12, all pages matched. At 6:18, a building alarm forced part of the floor to evacuate after smoke was reported near an electrical closet. Before leaving, Daniel sealed the closing binder inside a tamper-evident document envelope. Under the building's fire protocol, the conference suite switched to an emergency camera feed that covered the main doorway, but not the service entrance used by catering and maintenance staff. The alarm lasted 12 minutes. No fire was found. When the team returned, the visible security tape on the envelope appeared intact. Maya watched Tai-Ho enter 3 minutes later, carrying nothing. Victor followed. At 6:47, Min-jae took his seat. The black fountain pen beside him had belonged to his father. Helen sat to his right. Tai-Ho stood near the windows with Victor. The room looked almost exactly as it had in Maya's imagination during too many sleepless nights. A final question arose about a French warranty page. Maya stepped to the side table to compare the language. Behind her, Tai-Ho spoke quietly in Korean. "The seal held," Victor answered. "It doesn't matter. The signature page is clean." Maya's fingers stopped on the paper. Tai-Ho said, "Let him sign it. By sunrise, Min-jae will be finished." The room disappeared around the sentence. Maya turned her head just enough to see Victor watching Min-jae. Min-jae reached toward the fountain pen. Maya saw the sealed envelope Daniel had opened after the alarm. She saw a tiny crescent of adhesive residue on the inner flap. Not where the security tape had been placed, but beneath it. Someone had not broken the visible seal. Someone had separated the envelope at its factory seam and resealed it. Maya did not know whether the contract inside had been changed. She knew she would not live with silence. "Don't sign that copy." Every face turned toward her. Tai-Ho's expression hardened. "What are you doing?" Maya answered him in Korean. "Making sure everyone in this room understands the same document for the first time since she met him." Tai-Ho had no prepared expression. Victor went pale. Min-jae slowly removed his hand from the pen. "Daniel," he said, "lock the room. Nobody touches the binder." Daniel closed the conference doors and called security. Tai-Ho recovered first. "This is absurd. She heard a private sentence and invents a conspiracy." Maya looked at him. "I heard more than one sentence. Then you violated confidentiality. I was standing in the room you invited me into. You chose a language because you thought I was incapable of understanding it." Helen's cane tapped once against the floor. "Enough. Check the document." Daniel placed the approved digital copy on one screen while 2 attorneys opened the physical binder under camera. Page by page, the versions matched. Then they reached Annex 14C. The first page matched. The second matched. On the third page, 23 words had returned. The legacy liability clause was back. Nobody spoke. Daniel looked at the envelope seam. Someone altered this binder after our review. Victor stood. That's an accusation. No, Daniel said. That's a document fact. The accusation comes after we identify who did it. Maya watched Min Jae. He was not looking at Tae-ho. He was looking at the paragraph. What is the exposure? He asked. One of Bellier's lawyers looked toward Victor. Victor said nothing. Min Jae's voice became colder. What is the exposure? The Bellier attorney swallowed. The most recent actuarial estimate is approximately $180 million. Helen's hand tightened around her cane. Daniel whispered, "My God." Maya heard her father's old complaint in her head. Liabilities were people with names. $180 million was not a drafting mistake. It was a weapon. The closing stopped at 7:03 p.m. Nobody signed anything. Security collected the binder, the envelope, and the conference room access logs, while counsel instructed everyone to preserve their phones and messages. Victor objected to the demand and called it an overreaction. Tae-ho called it panic. Helen called both men foolish for speaking before the facts were secured. Maya said almost nothing. The adrenaline that had carried her through the interruption drained so quickly that her hands began to shake beneath the table. Min Jae noticed. He did not touch her. He simply moved a glass of water closer and continued answering his lawyers. That small restraint mattered more to her than a dramatic gesture would have. By midnight, forensic counsel had established that the physical binder contained pages printed on a different machine from the secured conference printer. The replacement pages used the same paper stock and footer code, but microscopic toner patterns differed. Investigators also found fresh adhesive disturbance along the envelope's factory seam beneath the untouched security tape. The building alarm had not been random. A maintenance panel on the floor below had been manually triggered with a service key, and the service entrance to the conference suite had opened once during the evacuation window. The emergency camera feed did not cover that service entrance. Separate corridor footage showed a man in a dark maintenance jacket entering the service stairwell at 6:14 and leaving through a loading entrance 18 minutes later. His face was partially hidden. The resemblance to the false hotel technician from about 4 weeks earlier was strong but not conclusive. The same outside actor appeared to have helped with both credential theft and document substitution. Min Jae ordered an independent investigation led by outside counsel rather than company security. That decision angered several directors, including Tae-ho, who said family matters should remain inside the family. Min Jae's answer was simple. A $180 million fraud is not a family matter. The acquisition announcement was delayed without explanation. Markets noticed. Reporters began asking questions. By Monday morning, Kang Meridian's share price had fallen 7% on uncertainty alone. That gave Tae-ho a new argument. He told directors that Min Jae's refusal to close had already destroyed hundreds of millions in market value. He did not mention the clause that would have caused far greater damage after signing. The board scheduled an emergency review for Wednesday. Maya had no formal role in it until Daniel called Tuesday evening. Tae-ho is challenging your credibility. Maya was at her mother's house, helping Evelyn move a stubborn bookcase that had apparently offended her by existing in the wrong corner for 20 years. On what basis? He says your interpretation of his Korean conversation is self-serving because you're angry about the suspension. He also says you had access to enough material to manufacture the leak discrepancy. Maya set down one end of the bookcase. Evelyn looked at her. Problem? Maya covered the phone. Rich people arguing about documents? So, Tuesday, Maya returned to Daniel. Do you want me at the board meeting? Min Jae does. Outside counsel says you can present only facts within your direct knowledge. Good. That's all I want to present. Maya. Tae-ho will try to make this personal. then he has less evidence than I do. Wednesday's board meeting took place at Kang Meridian's North American headquarters, 40 floors above Park Avenue. Maya arrived with her attorney, a slim evidence binder, and no expectation of being welcomed. The boardroom contained 12 directors, 3 outside lawyers, Daniel, Min-jae, Tae-ho, Helen, and an empty chair reserved for Victor. Victor did not appear. His firm sent a letter stating he was unavailable because of a family emergency. Maya filed that detail away. Outside counsel had already sent Hale and Ward a formal preservation request covering Victor's matter, billing, access, and subcontractor records. The firm had begun preserving those records and opened an internal compliance review while Victor remained away. Tae-ho spoke first. He described the failed closing as an embarrassment caused by poor controls and emotional decision-making. He praised Maya's linguistic talent with the same tone people used when complimenting a child before removing something fragile from her hands. Then he said, "We cannot allow a temporary interpreter with an obvious grievance to determine the leadership of a multinational company." Maya waited until counsel invited her to respond. "I agree." Several directors looked surprised. Tae-ho frowned. Maya continued, "I am not here to determine your leadership. I'm here to describe evidence that exists, whether you like me or not." She placed the first 2 documents side by side on the screen. "This is the version assigned to me at 3:11 p.m. Thursday. This is the document later leaked under my credential." She highlighted the disputed terminology. My assigned version uses the approved term pension reserve. The leaked version uses legacy retirement exposure. That phrase appears in 2 documents created by Hale and Ward before I ever received access. Tae-ho interrupted. "Common legal language?" "Possibly," Maya said. "So we tested something less subjective." She displayed page 52. "The leaked document contains footnote 7. My assigned file does not. System records show that footnote entered the document branch at 11:06 p.m. through a Hale and Ward credential. My account never accessed the branch after 8:14 p.m. Daniel displayed the independent forensic report confirming the timestamps. Maya continued, "Someone used my stolen session token at 2:43 a.m. The exported file contained content my authorized copy never possessed. That is why the export record can be real, while the accusation against me is false." A director asked, "Can you identify the person who stole the credential?" "No." "Can you prove Mr. Hale ordered it?" "No." "Can you prove Mr. Kang Tae-ho ordered it?" Maya looked directly at Tae-ho. "No." The honesty shifted the room more effectively than exaggeration would have. She changed the slide. "I can prove that the physical closing binder contained an unapproved liability clause. I can testify that Mr. Kang Tae-ho and Mr. Hale discussed Min-jae's signature as necessary for a board action. And I can tell you what I understood at the time, because I speak Korean." Tae-ho's face remained controlled. "Convenient." Maya answered in Korean, "It was convenient only because you assumed my badge described everything I knew." Then she repeated the phrases she had recorded that first night, separating the wording she remembered clearly from the meanings that had depended on later context. Several Korean-speaking directors exchanged glances. Tae-ho replied in Korean, "You expect this board to trust your memory?" Maya stayed in the same language. "No, I expect them to compare my memory with the documents you did not know would be found." Helen's eyes narrowed with something close to approval. Outside counsel then presented the building alarm evidence and the matching physical characteristics of the false technician. No single fact proved the full conspiracy. Together, the facts destroyed the claim that Maya had invented a story after being suspended. The board voted to continue the independent investigation and postponed any leadership change for 3 weeks, with a follow-up vote scheduled at the end of that period. Before anyone left, One director asked a question Maya had expected sooner. If you understood Korean from the beginning, why didn't you disclose that skill to every person in the room? Maya answered without looking at Tae-ho. My agency knew. My resume listed it. The assignment badge showed the languages I was contracted to interpret, not every language I have studied. I did not pretend not to understand Korean. Nobody asked because they believed they already knew the answer. The director frowned. Do you consider listening to a private conversation ethical? I consider pretending I didn't hear a conversation held within earshot impossible. I did not record it. I did not sell it. I did not repeat it until a document appeared that made the conversation materially relevant to the transaction. Outside counsel nodded. The director turned to Tae-ho. Did you ask Miss Brooks whether she spoke Korean before discussing the annex? Tae-ho's jaw tightened. No. Then your assumption was your own. For Maya, the exchange mattered because it removed one of the easiest distortions of the story. She had not set a trap. She had simply been underestimated. Min-jae watched her gather her papers afterward. He understood something else, too. Maya's competence had protected him, but her restraint had protected the integrity of the evidence. Had she exaggerated what she knew on the first day, Tae-ho could have dismissed everything that followed as a personal accusation. Her caution, the quality Min-jae had first found frustrating, had become one of the reasons the board believed her. Tae-ho lost the immediate removal vote he had been building toward. It was a victory. It was not the end. After the meeting, Maya's agency issued a written statement to affected clients, confirming that independent forensic analysis showed her credential had been compromised and that she was not responsible for the disclosure. 2 canceled clients apologized. 1 offered her the assignment back. Maya declined that one. Being cleared did not obligate her to return to people who had abandoned her before asking a second question. Min-jae found her near the lobby doors after the hearing. Your agency released the statement. They did. Is that what you wanted to? Maya thought about the question. It's what I asked for. I don't know if that makes it what I wanted. What's the difference? I wanted not to need it. Min-jae understood. He looked tired, but the severity she had first associated with him seemed thinner now, as if she could see the man behind the position. You saved me from signing that contract, he said. Maya shook her head. I stopped one signature. Your controls found the clause. Daniel preserved the logs. Your lawyers traced the pages. Don't turn this into a rescue story. I was trying to thank you. Then say thank you. He almost smiled. Thank you. You're welcome. They stood there for another second, both aware that the conversation had become strangely intimate because neither of them was pretending it was anything else. Min-jae asked. Have you eaten? Not since breakfast. Neither have I. That's a terrible leadership strategy. I'm learning. They walked 3 blocks to a small Korean restaurant Daniel recommended because it had no private room and no interest in corporate drama. Min-jae looked almost anonymous at a corner table beneath a faded photograph of Seoul from the 1980s. Maya ordered in Korean. The owner corrected her pronunciation of a regional dish. Maya thanked him. Min-jae raised an eyebrow. You let him correct you? He was right. You make it sound easy. It gets easier when being wrong isn't treated like humiliation. The sentence stayed between them. Min-jae stirred his soup. My father thought leaders should never be corrected in front of other people. That sounds exhausting for everyone around the leader. It was. Did you believe him? For a long time. And now, he looked at her. Now I employ Daniel, Maya laughed. The meal lasted 90 minutes. They discussed Philadelphia schools, Seoul winters, Min-jae's first disastrous attempt to cook for himself in college, and Evelyn's belief that every adult should own a cast-iron skillet. They did not discuss the acquisition until coffee. Min-jae said, If the investigation clears Tae-ho, I will owe him an apology I do not know how to give. And if it doesn't, then I will have to accept that someone I grew up with tried to destroy me. Maya heard what he did not say. Either outcome cost him something. You don't have to decide which grief you're feeling before the evidence arrives. He looked at her with surprise. Is that another Evelyn rule? No, that one's mine. Their attraction became visible first in absences, when Maya did not attend a document review. Min-jae noticed the empty chair before he noticed the new agenda. When Min-jae traveled to Toronto for one day, Maya caught herself checking the time because he usually called Daniel at 6. Neither of them spoke about it. They had too much at stake to confuse relief, danger, and gratitude with love. The investigation produced its next major discovery 4 days later. A forensic accountant traced the $180 million pension deficit to 3 Bellier legacy plans that had been underfunded for years. Victor's investment clients had quietly purchased debt instruments tied to Bellier's distressed assets. If Kang Meridian absorbed the hidden liability and its stock fell sharply, those investors could acquire specific plants and patents through prearranged financing covenants. The arrangement was legal only if all liabilities were honestly disclosed. The concealed annex would have turned an aggressive investment strategy into fraud. Tae-ho had another incentive. A family trust document stated that if Min-jae were removed for cause, Tae-ho would become interim executive chairman until shareholders selected a successor. Because Tae-ho had opposed Min-jae's North American expansion, the damage fit his strategy. Let Min-jae take the blame, seize interim control, and present the forced sale of selected Bellier assets as a rescue of Kang Meridian's core business. That did not prove conspiracy. It proved motive. Daniel brought the findings to Min-jae, Maya, Helen, and outside counsel in a private meeting. Helen listened without interrupting. When Daniel finished, she asked one question. Where is Victor Hale? Nobody had a good answer. His firm said he had taken personal leave. His apartment in Manhattan was empty. His phone had been turned off for 3 days. Airline and expense records produced through Hale and Ward's internal compliance review showed he had flown to London the morning after the board hearing. He had not returned. Tae-ho used Victor's disappearance as proof of his own innocence. The lawyer ran because the lawyer did it, he told the board. The explanation was simple enough to attract people who wanted the crisis to end. Then Tae-ho produced a document nobody expected. It was a notarized authorization dated 8 months earlier and apparently signed by Helen Kang. The document gave Tae-ho broad authority to negotiate contingent restructuring terms involving Bellier and other acquisition targets. If authentic, it suggested Helen had known Tae-ho was building an alternative financial structure long before Min-jae learned about it. Worse. One clause authorized him to protect family control in the event of executive incapacity, misconduct, or material transaction failure. The boardroom changed when everyone read that sentence. Min-jae did not look at Tae-ho. He looked at his mother. Helen looked at the document as if somebody had placed a dead animal on the table. I did not sign this. Tae-ho's voice softened. Aunt, you did. After the Busan Memorial Dinner, you were worried about Min-jae's North American expansion. Helen struck her cane against the floor. Do not tell me what I worried about. Tae-ho slid forward the notarization page. The signature was hers. At least it looked like hers. 2 directors who had served with Helen for decades said the same thing. Min-jae's face became unreadable. The meeting ended without resolution. In the elevator afterward, Maya stood beside Min-jae, while Daniel remained 2 floors above with counsel. Min-jae stared at the changing numbers above the door. She never supported the acquisition. Maya said nothing. She thought I was risking too much capital outside Korea. She told me so repeatedly. That doesn't mean she signed it. It means she had a reason. A reason isn't a signature. The elevator reached the lobby. Min-jae did not move. You want me to defend my mother because she's my mother? No. I want you to apply the same standard you demanded when I accused your cousin. He looked at her. Evidence first. Evidence first. The doors began to close, then reopened when Maya pressed the button. Min-jae stepped out. Will you help examine the language? If Helen agrees, it's her document. That answer mattered. Min-jae nodded. Helen agreed the next morning. She invited Maya to the family's New York residence, an understated townhouse that felt less like billionaire theater than a place accumulated across generations. Family photographs filled one wall of the library. Maya recognized Min-jae at 20, Tae-ho at 24, and Helen beside her late husband at company ceremonies in Seoul and Busan. Helen placed the disputed authorization on a reading table. Tell me what you need. First, examples of documents you unquestionably signed around the same period. Second, older corporate authorizations. Third, I need to know whether any wording here feels wrong to you, even if you can't explain why. Helen read slowly. Halfway down the Korean text, she stopped. Kang Industrial Holdings. What about it? That was the old English name used in Korean filings before we reorganized. Maya checked the page. The authorization referred repeatedly to the parent company, using a Korean phrase corresponding to Kang Industrial Holdings, although the legal entity had been Kang Meridian Group for years. When did you stop using the old name personally? Helen's face changed. After my husband died. Why then? The reorganization was his final project. He insisted the new name be used everywhere. After the funeral, I corrected anyone who used the old one because I considered that part of finishing his work. Maya felt the first thread pull tight. How long ago was that? 7 years. The authorization was dated 8 months earlier. A current document, supposedly dictated by Helen, used terminology she had refused to use for 7 years. It was not proof of forgery by itself. It was a reason to look backward. Helen opened a locked cabinet and removed several boxes of archived family governance papers. These are copies from before the reorganization. Tae-ho helped organize them after my husband's death. Maya and a forensic document examiner reviewed the files together. 3 hours later, the examiner found a template. It was a broad delegation of authority from 12 years earlier, carrying Helen's genuine signature and a notarization block from a family law office. The disputed document copied entire sentences from that template, including the obsolete company name. More importantly, the spacing around Helen's signature matched the old scan, pixel for pixel. Someone had lifted the signature image from the archived document and placed it onto the new authorization. The notary seal was also copied from an older instrument. Helen sat very still when the examiner explained it. Who had access to this archive? Maya asked. Helen's answer was immediate. Family counsel. Min-jae, Tae-ho, Daniel for corporate records, and 2 long-time administrative staff. The pool was still too large. Then Maya noticed a handwritten archive index on the inside lid of the box. Tae-ho's initials appeared beside the exact template number, dated 11 months earlier. He had personally reviewed that file 3 months before the forged authorization was supposedly signed. Helen closed her eyes. The pain on her face was not theatrical. His mother died when he was 16, she said. He ate dinner in my house more nights than his own. Maya did not tell her the evidence was only business. It wasn't. Betrayal rarely respected categories. Helen opened her eyes. What do we have? The examiner answered carefully. Strong evidence the signature and notary block were digitally reproduced from an older document. Evidence Mr. Tae-ho accessed the source file months before the disputed authorization. We still need metadata or testimony tying him directly to the creation. Helen nodded. Then we keep looking. Her voice broke only on the final word. Maya understood why dignity mattered more than comfort in that moment. She did not reach across the table. She stayed. That evening, Min Jae arrived after learning what they had found. Helen handed him the examiner's preliminary report herself. "I told you I did not sign it." Min Jae's face tightened. "I should have believed you." "No." He looked up. Helen tapped the report. "You should have investigated me. If family means exemption from evidence, then this family deserves whatever happens to it." Maya saw Min Jae absorb the rebuke. Helen added, "But next time do not look at me as if I buried your father twice." A startled laugh escaped Maya before she could stop it. Helen looked at her. "Was that funny?" "A little." Helen's mouth twitched. "Good. He has been too serious since childhood." Min Jae looked betrayed in an entirely different way. The tension broke just enough for all three of them to breathe. Later, on the townhouse steps, Min Jae walked Maya toward her car. "You gave my mother back her name," he said. "The examiner did." "You found the language clue?" Maya stopped. "You keep trying to assign one person the whole victory. Maybe I like knowing whom to thank." "Then thank everyone," he smiled. "Thank you." "Everyone," Maya shook her head. "Hopeless." His smile faded into something quieter. "Maya." She looked at him for a moment. Neither moved. The attraction between them no longer needed danger to explain it. Min Jae lifted one hand, then stopped before touching her face. "May I?" The question changed everything about the gesture. Maya nodded. He touched her cheek with the back of his fingers, gentle enough that she could have stepped away without resistance. She did not. Their first kiss was brief, almost cautious, when it ended. Maya looked at him and said, "That was probably a terrible professional decision." "You're not employed by me." "That's your defense?" "It's the first one I have." She laughed softly. "Get a better lawyer." For the next several days, they did something harder than beginning a romance. They kept boundaries around it. Maya continued working through her own counsel and under the investigation's rules. Min Jae did not give her access to evidence she was not authorized to see. They met for dinner twice without discussing the case for the first hour. They learned each other's habits. Min Jae drank coffee too late and then complained about sleep. Maya read the final page of mystery novels first when she became anxious, a habit she denied until he caught her doing it in a bookstore. He called her mother Professor Brooks after learning Evelyn had taught history. Evelyn heard about that and announced she might forgive him for being a billionaire. Maya corrected her. "He's not personally a billionaire. His family holdings are complicated." Evelyn stared at her. "You've become very specific. That's worse." The laughter did not erase the investigation. It made the cost of it clearer. Min Jae now had something personal to lose beyond his title. Maya had someone she wanted to trust beyond evidence. That was when Min Jae made the mistake that nearly ended them. Outside counsel discovered that the man posing as the hotel technician had previously worked as a private investigator for a subcontractor used by Victor's law firm. 2 years earlier, he had also performed discreet surveillance for a company controlled by one of Taiho's associates. The investigators could not yet prove he was following Maya. They could prove he had searched a commercial records database for Maya's Brooklyn home address after the board hearing. Daniel told Min Jae immediately. "We need to notify her." Min Jae looked at the report. "If we tell her before we know whether that search led to anyone approaching her, she'll step away from the investigation." Daniel's expression hardened. "That's her decision. If she steps away now, Taiho wins time. That's still her decision." Min Jae stood and walked to the window. Increase security around her building, discreetly, Do not approach her. Do not enter the property. Just watch for the investigator. Daniel did not move. She told you exactly what happened the last time an organization decided what information she could handle. I'm protecting her until we know whether there is a real threat. By keeping the possible threat secret, Min-jae turned. For 48 hours, Daniel's jaw tightened. You should tell her. I will. When we know more, it was the decision of a man who had spent his life believing responsibility meant carrying danger alone. It was also wrong. 48 hours became 4 days because the investigators could not identify whether anyone had actually followed Maya. During those 4 days, a security contractor watched the entrance of her Brooklyn building from an unmarked car. Maya noticed the car on the second night. She noticed it again the third. On the fourth morning, she photographed the license plate and asked a friend who worked in corporate security whether the company was legitimate. The answer came 20 minutes later. Kestrel Protective Services, one of Kang Meridian's approved vendors. Maya sat at her kitchen table looking at the message until the letters blurred. Then she called Min-jae. Did you put security outside my home? There was a pause. Too long. Maya, yes or no? Yes. Her hand tightened around the phone. Why? An investigator connected to Victor searched for your home address in a commercial records database. We don't know whether anyone acted on it. When did you learn that? Another pause. 4 days ago. Maya stood so quickly the chair scraped the floor. 4 days. I wanted confirmation before alarming you. You decided I wasn't allowed to know someone might be looking for me? I decided to protect you while we verified the threat. The exact words struck the old wound with almost surgical precision. Maya's voice lowered. Do you know what my old company told me after they stopped assigning me work? They said they hadn't wanted to involve me in the internal politics. They were protecting me from information I didn't need. This is different. Of course you think it is. You're the one who made the decision. Maya, somebody may have been trying to find you. Then I had a right to know. And if you had left the investigation, there it was. The truth beneath the protection. Maya closed her eyes. You were afraid I'd make a choice you didn't want. Min-jae did not answer. He didn't have to. Cancel the security outside my building. I don't think that's safe. I didn't ask what you think. Maya, cancel it, or I will call the police and report an unknown car watching my home. Then your discreet protection becomes a public explanation. His voice changed. I'll cancel it, thank you. Please let me explain, not today. She ended the call. Min-jae stared at his phone long after the line went dead. Daniel stood across his office. Say it. Min-jae said, She was right. Min-jae looked up sharply. Daniel did not retreat. You asked me to say it. Min-jae sat down. For once, power offered him nothing useful. He could call again. He could send people. He could arrange better protection. He could make half the logistical problems in Maya's life disappear before dinner. None of those things would repair the one problem he had created. He had treated her consent as an inconvenience to be managed. That evening he sent one message. I was wrong to hide the threat from you. I will not defend that decision. I have canceled the surveillance. I will give you space unless you ask me not to. Maya read it on the subway home. She did not answer. But she did not delete it. Maya stepped away from the investigation the next morning. She did it formally through counsel, not in anger and not as punishment. Her attorney notified outside counsel that she would remain available under subpoena or for factual questions about evidence already submitted, but would perform no additional consulting work. Min-jae received the notice at 9:06 a.m. He read it once and placed it face down on his desk. Daniel waited. Don't call her. Min-jae said. Daniel nodded. It was the first evidence that Min-jae had understood the lesson rather than merely regretted the consequence. Without Maya in the working sessions, the investigation continued more slowly. The forensic team traced the forged Helen authorization to a PDF created on a computer at a family administrative office in Seoul 11 months earlier. That computer had been replaced 6 months later, but backup records showed a remote login from a device assigned to Tae-ho's executive assistant. The assistant denied creating the document. When shown the metadata, she asked for her own lawyer. 2 days later, through counsel, she admitted that Tae-ho had instructed her to retrieve old family templates and assemble a contingency authorization for his review. She said he told her Helen had already approved the substance and needed only a clean version for archival purposes. The assistant had copied the old signature block because Tae-ho told her the signed original would be substituted later. No signed original ever appeared. The testimony tied Tae-ho directly to the forged document. It still did not prove that he had ordered the credential theft or closing binder swap. That missing link became critical because the board vote was approaching. Several directors argued that Tae-ho's forged authorization justified removing him, but did not automatically prove Min-jae had handled the acquisition responsibly. They focused on the market loss, the failed closing, and the fact that Min-jae had allowed an outside interpreter to become central to an internal crisis. The last argument infuriated Helen. "You mean he allowed the person who noticed your problem to speak about it?" she said during one call. The director answered that governance required clear lines. Helen replied, "Then perhaps your lines were drawn to protect the wrong people." Min-jae listened, but did not use his mother's defense as a shield. He knew the board had a legitimate question beneath the politics. Had he led the company well enough during the crisis? The answer could not simply be that Tae-ho was worse. 3 days before the vote, outside counsel presented Min-jae with an option. They had enough evidence to isolate Victor as the architect of the altered liability language and enough to show Tae-ho had forged the family authorization. What they could not yet prove was that the two men coordinated every illegal act. Counsel proposed a public report separating the matters. Victor and his unknown accomplices would take responsibility for the document fraud. Tae-ho would be removed for governance violations involving the forged authorization. Min-jae would remain CEO because no evidence showed he knew about the hidden liability. The report would omit unresolved evidence suggesting Tae-ho and Victor had been working together. It would also omit details of Maya's early Korean warning, because including them would expose how long senior leadership had known of potential internal misconduct before notifying regulators and affected pension representatives. The solution was legally cautious. Politically, it was elegant. It would protect Min-jae. It would protect the family name from the ugliest part of the scandal. It would also leave Maya's role reduced to a credential theft victim who had happened to notice a bad translation. Worse, it could delay notification to employee representatives about how close the pension obligations had come to being transferred without proper disclosure. Min-jae read the proposed report in silence. "If we disclose everything now, what happens?" he asked. Outside counsel answered carefully. "You may face a temporary removal while regulators review the board's conduct. The company could face additional reporting obligations. The acquisition is almost certainly dead. Litigation will follow. And the pension beneficiaries, they would receive a clearer record of what happened. And Maya Brooks?" The lawyer looked at him. "Her early warning would be documented, along with the fact that the company initially suspended her access based on compromised credentials." Min-jae closed the report. For most of his adult life, he had believed leadership meant absorbing damage before it reached the people below him. That instinct had built parts of the company and damaged parts of his life. It had also led him to decide what Maya was allowed to know. Now the same instinct offered him another private solution. Protect the institution, control the story, decide which truths other people needed. He pushed the report back across the table. No, counsel frowned. No to which part? No incomplete report. We disclose the timeline, the altered annexes, the credential compromise, the forged authorization, and every material fact we have about the pension exposure. We identify what remains unproven. Daniel watched him. The lawyer said, "That may cost you your position, then the board can remove me with the full facts. You could preserve your authority and continue the investigation from inside." Min Jae thought of Maya saying that help and control were not always the same thing. Authority is not useful if I keep it by deciding which truth everyone else is allowed to see. The lawyer sat back. You're certain? Prepare the full disclosure. Min Jae also announced that he would voluntarily step aside from day-to-day executive authority until an independent committee completed its review. Daniel would remain chief of staff to the interim operating committee rather than become Min Jae's proxy. Min Jae refused to name his own temporary replacement. The board would choose one. Min Jae's voluntary step-aside superseded the leadership vote that had been scheduled for the end of the 3-week window. And the board converted that date into a formal special committee review of both the fraud and Min Jae's conduct. The announcement stunned markets and enraged several family shareholders. Helen called her son that evening. Your father would have called this reckless. Min Jae stood in his darkened office, packing personal papers into a plain cardboard box. Do you? Helen took a long time to answer. Ask me after I stop being angry that you may have thrown away 30 years of work. Fair. But I will say one thing now. What? He would have respected that you chose the consequences before someone forced them on you. Min Jae closed his eyes. Thank you. Helen's voice softened. Do not make me say it twice. Maya learned about the disclosure from the news, not from Min Jae. That mattered. He had kept his promise to give her space, even when the decision directly affected her reputation. The public report stated that Maya had warned senior leadership about suspicious Korean language comments before the altered annex was confirmed. It also acknowledged that her project credential had later been compromised and that the company's initial suspension of her access had contributed to reputational harm. The report did not describe her as a hero. It described what happened. For Maya, that was more valuable. She read the section 3 times at her mother's kitchen table. Evelyn poured tea and waited. He stepped down, Maya said. Temporarily. He didn't have to. According to the television, he did something terrible called full disclosure. Wall Street seems upset. Maya looked at her mother. You watched financial news? For you. I have suffered greatly, Maya smiled, then looked back at the report. He could have protected himself. Evelyn sat opposite her. Are you asking whether that means you should forgive him? Maybe. No. Maya blinked. Evelyn continued. It means he made one good decision after one bad decision. Forgiveness is your decision. Don't make his improvement into another obligation for you. Maya leaned back. You really did save the harshest version of motherhood for retirement. I have more free time. Maya laughed, then became quiet. I miss him. That is information too, not instructions? No, just information. Understand before you answer? The independent committee scheduled a formal evidentiary hearing for the following Monday. Maya's attorney advised that she might be called because her handwritten notes from the first meeting established the earliest known reference to the pension annex. The notes had been photographed and time-stamped by her agency's compliance system on the night she created them. They could not prove every word Taeho said. They could prove that Maya had recorded the concepts before anyone publicly knew an altered pension clause existed. Maya agreed to testify. She did not tell Min Jae. She did not need his permission, and he did not need advance reassurance. The hearing room was smaller than the boardroom and far less dramatic. Independent directors sat behind a long table with outside counsel, and a retired federal judge serving as committee chair. Tai-ho attended with 2 attorneys. Min-jae sat separately with his own counsel because his conduct was also under review. Helen sat in the public observer section. Maya entered at 9:32 a.m. Min-jae looked up. For 1 second, his carefully neutral expression broke. He did not smile. He simply stood until she took her seat. Maya testified for nearly 2 hours. She described the assignment languages on her badge. She described her Korean background. She described the first conversation between Tae-ho and Victor, distinguishing exact remembered phrases from interpretations that had become clearer only after later evidence appeared. That distinction impressed the committee chair. "You're telling us what you did not know at the time," the judge said. "Yes. Why is that important to you?" "Because memory gets more confident when later facts seem to confirm it. I don't want later knowledge to rewrite what I actually understood that morning." The judge nodded. "Continue." Maya presented her notebook page. The Korean words were written in Romanized shorthand and Hangul, with question marks beside uncertain meanings. One line read "Pension Annex outside Daniel Review until Thursday." Another read "Signature makes liability follow." A third read "Board has reason after." The notes had been uploaded to her agency's encrypted work journal at 8:54 p.m. that first day, long before the altered clause was discovered. Tai-ho's lawyer challenged the notes as self-created evidence. Maya agreed. "They prove what I recorded, not that every word I recorded was true." The lawyer seemed briefly wrong-footed. Maya continued. "Their value is that they predate the later events. The committee can decide how much weight that deserves alongside independent documents and testimony." She refused to overclaim. That made the claims she did make harder to attack. The executive assistant testified next. She described Tae-ho's instruction to build the false authorization from old templates. Then investigators presented a new piece of evidence Hale and Ward's compliance team had recovered that morning from records preserved after the board hearing. A compliance backup contained deleted billing entries from Victor's matter file. One entry, created 4 weeks before the closing, billed a private investigation subcontractor for credential access and physical closing logistics. The client code attached to the entry was not Bellier. It was a special purpose entity controlled by a trust whose beneficial owner was Kang Tae-ho. The room became completely still. Tai-ho whispered to his lawyer. His lawyer asked for a recess. The committee chair denied an immediate recess until the witness authenticated the record. A Hale and Ward compliance officer explained that billing codes were generated by the firm's accounting system and could not be altered by a client after submission. The same code appeared on an invoice paid from the Tae-ho-controlled entity. The connection was finally direct. Tae-ho had paid the network that supplied the false technician and closing operative. His defense shifted from denial to claiming that the investigators had been hired only to verify security weaknesses. The explanation failed against the timing, the forged authorization, the hidden annex, and his own Korean statements. For the first time, the conspiracy had a complete causal chain. Tai-ho wanted Min-jae removed. Victor wanted distressed assets available to his investors. They needed a financial disaster tied to Min-jae's signature. They concealed the pension liability, created a paper trail suggesting family authorization, compromised Maya's credential to discredit the interpreter, whose questions had begun triggering document scrutiny, and substituted the dangerous annex when stronger controls blocked the digital route. They never realized until the closing that she had also understood their Korean conversation. Each step had created the evidence that eventually exposed the next. Their plan had not failed because Maya possessed magical insight. It failed because they repeatedly underestimated the people performing ordinary work around powerful men. An interpreter noticed language. A chief of staff preserved logs. A document examiner noticed pixels. An administrative assistant finally told the truth. A mother remembered the name her husband had insisted they stop using. The committee adjourned late that afternoon. The board suspended Tejo from executive and committee roles the next morning, began the process of removing him as a director, and referred the evidence to federal and state authorities with jurisdiction over the transaction. His attorneys announced that he would contest any criminal allegations. Several weeks later, Victor, facing separate charges connected to document fraud and market manipulation, returned to the United States through a negotiated surrender arranged by counsel and was taken into custody pending proceedings. The story did not end with a courtroom sentence, because real investigations did not move at the speed of family drama. What mattered immediately was that neither man controlled the company or the transaction anymore. Bellier's board terminated the acquisition. The pension deficit remained with the entities legally responsible for it, while regulators and employee representatives negotiated a restructuring plan. Kang Meridian did not inherit the $180 million obligation through a hidden paragraph. Thousands of workers and retirees received formal notice explaining the status of their plans, instead of learning about it after a corporate collapse. The outcome was messy. It was also real enough to matter. Meanwhile, Min Jae's independent review continued, lasting 7 weeks in total after Maya's testimony. The independent committee criticized his early reliance on informal family governance and his decision to conceal the possible surveillance threat from Maya. That second issue did not create corporate liability, but Min Jae insisted it remain in his personal statement to the board. "Why include it?" one director asked. "Because leadership failures don't become irrelevant because they happen to one person instead of 1,000. The committee ultimately found no evidence that Min Jae participated in the fraud or knowingly exposed the company to the hidden pension liability. The board asked him to return as chief executive under a new governance structure. He accepted only after independent compliance officers received authority that family directors could not override. Helen supported the reform publicly. Several relatives did not speak to her for months. "Peace is cheaper when other people pay for it," she told Maya later. "I've decided to buy something more expensive." Maya liked her more every time Helen said something that sounded like an insult and a blessing at once. Maya did not return to taking a full schedule of assignments through her agency. The scandal had made her reputation more visible, but visibility no longer felt like security. She wanted control of the standards under which she worked. With savings, a small business loan, and 2 former colleagues as partners, she founded Brooks Language and Ethics Consulting. The company specialized in multilingual transaction review, interpreter protocol, and communication risk audits for organizations where one ambiguous sentence could become an expensive lie. Her first major client was not Kang Meridian. She insisted on that. Her first client was a non-profit hospital network in Pennsylvania that needed multilingual consent procedures reviewed after a patient complaint. Her second was a manufacturing union preparing bilingual pension communications. Only then did Kang Meridian sign a consulting agreement with Brooks Language and Ethics. The contract went through competitive review and contained an independence clause Maya wrote herself. Min Jae did not negotiate her fee. Daniel did. He complained about it for exactly 3 minutes. Maya raised the price by 2%. Daniel stared at her. "That is retaliation. That's market adjustment. Min Jae has been a terrible influence on you. You should see what my mother charges for advice." Their friendship survived. Maya and Min Jae took longer to repair what had broken. Even after Min Jae's review ended, they kept their distance for several more weeks, exchanging only necessary messages. Min Jae did not send apologies disguised as invitations. Maya did not test him with silence designed to make him chase her. They both returned to their lives and allowed the rupture to remain real. Then one Saturday afternoon, Maya sent him a message. "Coffee. Public place. No security car outside my building." His reply came a minute later. agreed to all terms. They met at a bookstore cafe in Brooklyn. Min-jae arrived without Daniel, without a driver waiting at the curb, and without the posture of a man entering a negotiation. Maya noticed that he still scanned the room once before sitting. Some habits were professional, not controlling. She could tell the difference now. "I read your board statement," she said. "I assumed you might." "You included what happened with the surveillance?" "Yes." "Why?" "Because I spent most of my life believing good intentions excused decisions other people never agreed to. They don't." Maya wrapped both hands around her coffee. "I believe you were trying to protect me. That doesn't make it acceptable." "No." He met her eyes. "I'm sorry, not because you left, because I was wrong before you left." That distinction loosened something in her chest. "Thank you." He did not ask whether they were together again. Instead, he said, "How is the new company?" Maya told him. They spent 2 hours talking. At the end, she walked him to the street. "Would you like to have dinner next week?" he asked. "As a date?" "Yes, I am trying to make my intentions explicit." "Your interpreter approves." "You're not my interpreter." Maya smiled. "Good answer." Their second beginning was slower than the first. It was also stronger. Min-jae met Evelyn 3 weeks later at Maya's apartment over roast chicken and the cast-iron skillet that had become family mythology. Evelyn inspected him with the calm severity of a retired teacher deciding whether a student deserved extra credit. "Maya says you know how to apologize," she said. Min-jae nearly choked on his water. "I'm learning." Useful skill, rare in executives. Maya covered her face with one hand. "Mom." "What I'm making conversation," Min-jae recovered. "Miss Brooks, Maya says you taught her to understand before she answers." "Mrs. Brooks. And yes, she uses it against me," Evelyn smiled. "Then you're receiving the advanced course." Maya laughed so hard she had to put down her fork. Months passed. The criminal and civil cases continued in the background, moving through hearings, motions, and negotiations, with none of the cinematic speed reporters preferred. Kang Meridian recovered slowly from the failed acquisition. Min-jae spent more time with employee representatives than he had before the crisis. He discovered that listening directly was less efficient than receiving summaries and much harder to manipulate. Maya's firm grew to 6 employees. She hired one interpreter, who had been quietly blacklisted after reporting a client's attempt to alter a translated safety statement when the woman nervously explained the gap on her resume. Maya felt the past fold back on itself. "You don't have to convince me that speaking up can be expensive." Maya said, "Tell me what you learned from it." The woman became one of her best consultants. Helen and Evelyn met at a small family dinner in New York 6 months after the failed closing. There were no photographers and no board members. Helen brought Korean pears. Evelyn brought cornbread because she refused to attend any gathering where rich people might mistake decorative food for dinner. The 2 women disagreed about nearly everything for the first 20 minutes. By dessert, they were discussing adult children as if Maya and Min-jae were not sitting 6 feet away. "He works too much," Helen said. "She does too," Evelyn replied. "He thinks sleeping 5 hours is discipline. She thinks answering email at midnight is independence." Maya looked at Min-jae. "We should leave. This is my mother's house." "Then we should still leave." He smiled. "After dinner." Min-jae asked Maya to walk with him into the library. The old archive boxes were gone, moved to secure corporate storage after the investigation. On the reading table lay a narrow wooden case. Maya looked at him suspiciously. "If that's jewelry, I am leaving." "It's not jewelry. That was very fast. You told me to make intentions explicit." He opened the case. Inside lay the black fountain pen from the failed closing. Maya stopped smiling. She remembered his hand moving toward it. She remembered Taeho's voice. She remembered the terror of choosing whether to speak. "I thought the investigators had it," she said. "They returned it after the document evidence was released. It belonged to my father." "Then you should keep it." "I am keeping it. I'm showing you something." He lifted the pen but did not hand it to her. "I used to think power meant knowing when to sign. My father believed decisions became leadership only when someone was willing to put his name beneath them." Maya waited. "And now?" Min-jae looked at the pen, then at her. "Now I think power also means knowing who has earned the right to stop you." The sentence brought tears to Maya's eyes before she could decide whether she wanted them there. Min-jae set the pen back in its case. "You stopped me because you knew something I didn't. Later. I hurt you because I decided what you didn't need to know. I understand the difference now." Maya exhaled slowly. "Understanding isn't approval." He smiled at the callback. "No, but it can be a beginning." She looked toward the hallway where their mothers were still talking loudly enough to prove privacy had become theoretical. "What exactly are you asking me?" Min-jae did not kneel. There was no ring. He did not turn their relationship into a surprise decision she had seconds to accept. "I'm asking whether you want to build a life with me," he said. "Not inside my company, not under my protection, with me. We can decide what that means together." Maya studied his face. 6 months earlier, she would have searched for the hidden clause. Now she knew there would always be clauses neither of them could predict. Trust was not the absence of risk. It was the right to receive the truth and choose anyway. "Yes," she said. "I want to try." Min-jae's relief appeared before his smile. Maya pointed one finger at him. "Try. That's the operative word." "Understood. And if you ever put an unmarked security car outside my building again?" "Your mother already explained the consequences." Maya stared at him. "She did what?" From the hallway, Evelyn called. "I can hear you!" Helen laughed. Maya closed her eyes. Min-jae leaned closer. "Should I be worried?" She looked at him, then toward the 2 women beyond the door. "Very." He kissed her gently. "No board voted on it. No family approved it. No contract defined it." Months later, the fountain pen sat in a glass case in Min-jae's office, beside a small card with no corporate slogan. The card contained 4 words. "Understand before you answer." Visitors sometimes assumed it was advice about negotiation. Min-jae never corrected them. For him, it meant something larger. Listen before deciding for someone else. Look beyond the title printed on a badge. Do not confuse power with permission, and never assume the quietest person in the room understands the least. Maya no longer wore the old English-French conference badge. Her own company card carried her name above her title, founder and principal consultant. Beneath it, in smaller type, were the languages she chose to list. English, French, Korean, nothing hidden, nothing borrowed, nothing anyone else had permission to define for her.